Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. In this lesson, we continue working on our beautiful undercollar. I'm going to show you how to baste and cross stitch the collar onto the jacket so that it works in perfect harmony with the lapel. You're not going to want to miss this lesson. That's what's happening today in the Atelier. Welcome back. We have just finished up our beautiful little undercollar here. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to baste our undercollar onto the jacket. All right. Now, what we want to make sure of before we get to that is that we have a nice amount of curve here, that our curve is going to work very nicely. It's going to work in harmony. And if I'm just testing this out a little bit, it looks pretty gosh darn good to me. Yeah, it's falling into line quite nicely. All right. Now, here's the thing. If you remember, I'm going to pull the jacket down a little bit like this. Okay. If you remember, we left 2.5 centimeters of inlay at the back of our neckline, all right? And the reason we did that is because we wanted to give the undercollar something to hold on to, okay? So remember, we've got our 2.5 centimeters here, which represents our collar stand. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be lining up the collar stand. I'm going to just turn this a little bit so you can see it from a side view, okay? Let's get this, a lot going on here. What we're going to be doing is, if you see right here, all right, this is my neckline. This would normally be a raw edge, okay? Let me just make sure you can see that. There we go. So this is your neckline, or our neckline, and it would normally be a raw edge. So this inlay, all right, is going to help us hold our beautiful collar on. So what we're going to be doing, and it's no coincidence that we left 2.5 centimeters, because as you've learned, our collar stand is 2.5 centimeters, okay? So we're going to be lining this up right along those mark stitches and basting this down and bringing it around. And when we get to the shoulder line, okay, we're going to be adding just a little bit of ease right before we get to the shoulder line. That's really important, okay? So it helps the collar curve around without having any tightness, and that's really, really important, okay? So before we get started getting this guy in, okay, what we need to do is we actually need to come in and baste and secure our, if you remember, we have our canvas under here, right? So what we want to do is we want to baste and secure our canvas a little bit at the shoulder line and definitely at the neckline, because we don't want that flailing all over the place, okay? Because we're actually going to be cross-stitching the canvas here, okay? All around the collar, all right? So all of this is going to get cross-stitched. So we want it to be really nice and secure, okay? We don't want, like I said, we don't want it flailing all over the place. So the very first thing, let me get our jacket positioned nicely, is to get a bit of thread here, and let's get that ready to secure on both sides, both the right and left side. We want to do that, okay? It's pretty simple to do. Not too tough, all right? So the other thing that's important as we start this process, I want to emphasize that in no way, shape, or form do we want to get our lining involved in the collar, okay? The lining is going to get attached in a little while here, okay? When we start putting the sleeves in, we're going to get the lining attached around the armhole, okay? And then once we have the sleeves in, we'll get the lining attached up around the shoulder line and neckline. So keep this out of the way for now, okay? Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit of a problem for you if you get that involved. Just to let you know. All right, so what I'm doing here, okay, is I've got my shoulder line, okay, right here. Let me pull this forward a little bit. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and as I tack this, I'm just coming maybe about 2.5 centimeters off of my neckline, okay? Just back a couple centimeters, okay? And as I tack this, I'm actually grabbing the canvas underneath, okay? That's really important. We want all this to come together. So when you do that, make sure that this is nice and flat. You don't have any gaps through here or any bulges, okay? And then just take your thumb and very softly smooth this towards the neckline. And we're going to make a nice little, we're going to do a nice little baste here, okay? And again, as I baste and I smooth, all right, I'm grabbing all of the canvas underneath. Now, I've just come into my neckline here, or past the neckline, if you will, into the inlay. So here's my neckline right here, and I'm right into the inlay here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack this off right here, okay? And again, I'm going to smooth, and I'm going to come down like almost like a pad stitch, but not a pad stitch, okay? I'm not coming straight down. I'm coming down and bringing my thread in at an angle, okay? And then I'm going to smooth it out again and bring my, come down a couple, a centimeter or so, all right? And grab everything, the cloth, the canvas, and so forth, okay? And I'm just going to come down like 3 stitches or so. That's all I need to secure all this, okay? And then I'm going to tack it, and I'm going to come right back up. So I'm going to come here. So I'm making like an X, like a cross. You see that? Right there, there's a little cross. And here. So what I've done is I've secured the cloth at the inlay, all right, to the canvas underneath. All right, so now when we go to put the collar in, this isn't going to move around. That's going to stay put. All right, perfect. So we'll do the other side. Now here, it's a little tricky because I have to shift my coat around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it like so, because I think having it all on the floor, and it's going to be a real nuisance, okay? So here, let me just get this situated nicely. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to just hold this up a little bit because I've got a little bit, this is my left side. So this was my drop shoulder. I didn't have as much cloth coming around the neckline on this shoulder, okay? Here I do. So I just want to make sure that before I put my needle and thread in, that this is nice and flat, and there's no wrinkles and so forth. I'm not pulling it in any direction, okay? So here, just about 1 centimeter or so, 2 centimeters outside of my neckline, on the shoulder line, I'm going to tack this, okay? And then I'm going to baste, smooth with my finger, and I'm basting through the canvas, all right, and coming into the inlay. All right, I'm coming into the inlay here. And I've got canvas and cloth all in this area. So here my neckline is here. Okay, that's my neckline. It's a little hard to see because the mark stitches are a little sparse here, okay? So here again, I'm going to smooth, all right? And then I'm going to bring my stitch down about 1 centimeter or so, like that. You don't want to pull this tight, you just want to smooth it out and secure. Okay, bring this down again. So we're smoothing and securing to the canvas underneath. All right, and then we're going to come back, tack it, and come back the same way. So all this is held down very nicely. Okay, perfect. Perfecto. All right, we'll tack that off. So that's that. Step 1, secure your neckline. All right, step 1. Now we're definitely going to need more thread than that for our next step. Now, this next step is a little tricky because of the way I have to hold this. I'm going to hold it away from me so that you can see what I'm doing. All right. The first thing I want to do is I want to just lay this out so I get a good feel for where I want this all to sit. Yeah. Here, here. So even though I have a drop shoulder, yeah, I want to make sure I have enough on both sides, okay, to bring this around and have this come where I want. Okay, that should be fine. Because remember, we're leaving 5 centimeters, yeah, here, all right? So we want this to we want to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be, okay? All right. It'll make sense in a minute when I start basting all this together. All right, my friends. Let's see what we can do here, yes? All right. And I may have to turn this a bit to get around completely. All right. All right. Let's open this up. Okay. So I am going to start a little bit towards, not quite, this is the center of my neckline right here, okay? So I'm going to come over just a little bit, and I'm not going to start right at the center. I'm just going to come over a little bit onto the right side. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to tack. Now remember, I said don't catch your lining, okay? Don't catch the lining of the jacket. You're going to obviously have the lining that we put in as a support. That's fine. We have to catch that, yeah? But we don't want to catch the jacket lining. All right. So right here, I'm going to tack that, okay? And now what I want to do is, you can see here are my mark stitches indicating where the raw edge of my neckline is, okay? What I want to do is I want to make sure that the edge of my collar stand here is matching up with those mark stitches at the neckline perfectly. And what I'm doing is I'm just rolling the collar over my finger ever so slightly, yeah? Because again, I don't want to put in a huge amount of ease at this point, but if I had like a tiny smidgen, I would not be upset about it, okay? Again, we don't want our collar to be tight at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue to line my collar up and then baste like so, okay? Just lining it up. And you don't want to, your basting stitches can be, maybe these are about 1 centimeter or so, and that's fine, okay? So we want to just make sure this continues to stay lined up with our mark stitches. Very important. We don't want any cloth gathering underneath either. We want to keep the cloth underneath the collar nice and smooth, okay? And just baste it down so it stays nice and secure. Oh dear. I think I have a little, I had a little knot. Out you go. Go on, you. Sometimes it can just be so stubborn. Yeah? Get out of there. There we go. I don't know why. All right. So we're going to continue just like this. All right. Now, I have a little bit of ways. I'm going to get closer to my shoulder line here in a second. And when I do, I'm going to show you how we're going to add this little bit of ease, okay? Just a smidgen of ease. We get a little closer. So again, just keep things smooth. Keep everything lined up along the neckline, okay? Now here, let's see where I am here. I think one more stitch will do it. Yes. Yes, it will. One more stitch. Okay? All right. So what I'm going to do here now, okay, is here's my shoulder line right here. So before I come around that curve, what I want to do is I want to add just a smidgen of ease into the collar. So this can be a little bit tricky, but stick with me, all right? Stick with me. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tack this stitch right here, okay? Just tack it off. It's going to hold everything here nicely. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here. Again, I'm going to see if I can do this. I've never put a collar in at this angle before, so it's a little weird, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to lift the collar up very slightly, okay? You see that? I just brought the collar up and back by like a teeny weeny amount. We don't want too much, okay? A couple millimeters, okay? And then I'm going to tack that, all right, here, okay? And then I'm going to do the same right here. I'm going to bring this up like so, give it a little bit of ease. You see that? How there's like a boop, a ripple, boop, okay? Same amount as I gave the last one, all right? Make sure everything underneath is flat because you have inlay. We're starting to get into the inlay, okay? So you don't want to have any folds underneath here. You see that? Make sure everything is laying nice and flat, okay? You see? All right. I know there's a lot going on. You have to be aware of what's going on here and underneath. So it can be a little awkward the first time you do it. All right, and then here, let's see. That's not very much ease, is it? No, that's not enough ease. Like I always say, anytime you have a chance to go back and do something better, especially when you're learning tailoring, do it. Do it, do it, do it. When we get to the top collar, I'll share a funny story with you. A story that was not funny at the time at all, but it is now, okay? Just, I'll have to remind myself. Okay, that's better. That's better. Let's get that there. Okay, so there's that. Oh, for Lord's sakes. Oh, for God's sakes. Come here. There we go. Let's get that situated. All right, and then we're going to tack it, and we tack it because we're holding it. If we don't tack it, there's a way, there's a possibility that ease can kind of distribute its way out. So we're locking it in, okay? You want to lock that little bit of ease in right there, okay? And then here again, I'm still lining everything up at my shoulder line, okay? So I'm going to add one more bit of ease here. All right, again, making sure everything's flat underneath. All right, done. Perfect, and lock that in. So I'm hoping you can see here how we have a ripple, okay, from putting that ease in right before the shoulder line, okay? Hopefully you can see those little ripples, all right? Now I have to turn my jacket around, but I think you'll be able to see what's going on pretty easily, all right? Because this part, although all of it's important, this part is crucial to getting your collar in, okay? Crucial. If you remember in the last lesson, okay, I explained to you on our volunteer from the audience over here that we have a break line on the collar, right? There's our break line on our collar, which separates the fall, right, from the stand. So here's our break line right here, okay? And of course we have our break line on the jacket. You can see it right here very clearly. So what we have to do, and in fact, actually I have to turn this around the other way, but that's all right. Let me explain first. What we need to do is we now are not going to follow the neckline any further. If I do, my collar is going to be laying like this, okay? And I don't want that, all right? I want my collar to lie so that it lines up beautifully, you see, with the break line on the jacket, like so, okay? So let me turn this because I can't do it this way. It's just so much. There's just too much happening. And I will do my very best to ensure that you see what I'm doing here, okay? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around my shoulder line here, okay? And again, bring this a little further forward so you can see. So I'm going to come right here at my shoulder line, and I'm going to continue to baste this down. But now, as I baste, okay, I'm actually lining my break line up with the break line on the jacket, okay? Now we can keep checking, and sometimes if you want, you can even take a little pin. If it helps you, okay, you can take a little pin and you can put it right here where the collar fall ends. Now, when you do that, make sure that you're not grabbing any lining underneath, okay? Make sure you're not grabbing any of the lining underneath. And then, I just want to make sure that this is nice and flat, okay? And then, we can continue to baste this down, just like we were, okay? Just like we were. Beautiful. And what we can do before we finish our baste, okay, really quick here, let's just double check and make sure that if we turn this collar back like this, and we turn our lapel back, that everything's going to lay nice and gentle. In other words, okay, one second, let me put my pin here. In other words, what we want to make sure of is when the collar is lining up with the break line on the collar is lining up with the break line on the jacket, okay? This isn't happening where the break line is doing something like this, where it won't lay on the break line, or it's doing something like this where it's being pulled, all right? But if we have it laying, you see, just like that now, that's perfect, all right? That's perfect. It's both of them are like, oh, hello, it's very nice to meet you. It's so nice to meet you. Can I just stay here for a bit? I have a terrible English accent, but I try. But no, so my point is they're working in harmony with one another. They like each other. They're not pulling or arguing or giving each other a hard time, okay? So that's what you want to see right there. So bam. All right, let me turn this back around and continue, continue basting this, okay? Continue basting this and finishing it off here. There we go. Missy's back. Hello, Pebbles. She's in the room. Pebbles is in the house. All right. What would I do without her? She's like my constant companion. She's my company, you know? She's so great. She's so wonderful. All right, so here we go. And I've got my last baste right here, okay, where I'm finishing out the collar stand, the baste along the collar stand. All right. And that looks, one more stitch here will do it, okay? I'm going to tack this off and right here. All right, so we have that. So that's fantastic. Now, the other thing, I'm just going to put my needle here for a moment. I'm going to swing this coat around again, okay? The other thing that we have to do is we have to make sure, so we have to baste this to the lapel as well, okay? We have to baste this to the lapel as well. So this is going to come over like so, all right, just like that. And underneath, we're going to baste the collar and the lapel to each other. So I highly suggest that as you have this laying here so beautifully and nice, okay, that you take a pin and pin the collar and the lapel together, okay, just like this. Easier said than done, obviously, all right? So when we turn it over this way, all right, I'm going to be basting the collar to the lapel here, all right? And it's because we have to, it's going to be attached. It has to, right? Until we go to cut it, all right? But we want to make sure that that everything's working. This isn't, you know, if we just had this here, all this is still flailing around and we don't want that, okay? So we want everything to be nice and secure in preparation for cross-stitching the collar, which is what we'll do next, okay? All right. So I'll turn it back around again. All this turning, this poor coat. That's why we do a final press, right? All right, so when you turn this, the one thing you'll realize is that there may be a little bit, you see how this is popping up here? There's maybe a little bit of a gap or a difference. So that's okay, don't worry about that. We know that the collar is gonna lay nice. We've just proven that. And here, again, be very aware of what's happening underneath, right? Because look, we still have our bridle, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that. But make sure at this point you do not get the bridle involved in any of this, okay? Keep him out of the way completely, all right? Because we're going to incorporate him into the cross stitching when we do the cross stitching, okay? All right, so here, let me see, just trying to arrange this so that I can give you a couple of views from both cameras, okay? So here, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to continue to baste this very nicely. I'm going to hold this up just so that this is, you know, there shouldn't be any ease here, but I'm just holding it up just so that everything comes together very nicely, okay? All right. So I'm ensuring that things are not real tight, okay? And I'm just going to come right down to the very end of my collar. Now, eventually, we're going to be cutting some of this off, okay? Eventually, but not quite yet, okay? Not quite yet. There we go. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. One more little stitch here should do it. This is one of those times that you are very thankful to have a superhero on your finger because it's a little tough getting through all these thicknesses, right? We've got the melton and the linen and the goodness gracious, we've got the canvas and the cloth and the everything. We've got layers and layers of cloth that we're going through here. So the thimble really helps us to handle that. Okay, so that looks fantastic. Okay, we're going to turn this guy around, or this gal. Oh, that's better. There we go. I'm going to turn this gal around, and now we have to work on, I'll just lay this out nice. Yes, see, that looks beautiful. Okay, all right. So now we have to work on this side coming into here, okay? So let me get a little bit more thread. But before I do, let's see. Let's get our collar, our break line drawn in here so we can see it nicely. All right, we need to be able to see our break line. There we go. Beautiful, just like that. So this side, same thing, okay? I'm going to be basting this down, although I've come forward. So I really don't have a lot of basting to do right here until I start adding that bit of ease around my shoulder line, right? So we'll do that. All right. Get a little bit more thread on the old needle here. Lovely. All right. So here again, because I'm starting here in the back, I'm going to, let's turn this over so you can see it a little bit more, hopefully, in this camera. Yes, very good. Always checking to make sure you can see what I'm doing. So here I'm just going to tack this off, like so. Boy, I gave myself a lot of thread, huh? That's all right. I'm going to continue. So here's my shoulder line right here, okay? So I have maybe one more stitch here before I have to start giving this a little bit of ease. Let's see. So we give three little stitches of ease. Yes. Yeah, maybe one more stitch here. There we go. All right. So here I'm going to tack it. Again, I want to be aware of what's going on under the collar as well. So everything's laying flat. The bridle is out of the way. He's not getting involved in the collar basting drama. All right. And here I'm just going to slip. I'm going to take my collar and I'm just going to pull it up slightly here. Okay. And baste it down just to give it that little bit of ease. Okay. This side is always a little bit more challenging. There we go. That's better. I want to see a definite ripple, you know? I want to see a nice ripple there. And the other thing is you have to check, you want to make sure that you're putting the same amount of ease here as you did over there. It's very important. Always. Okay? So here, another little ripple. And we tack it, right? Get in here and tack it. Lock it in. Come on. There we go. Okay, lock it in. All right. And one more here. right at the shoulder line, just like that, okay? Just like that. We'll lock this guy in. All right, very good. Now, of course, we are definitely going to be we'll be pressing this out, okay? Not quite yet, all right? Not quite yet, but we will be pressing that ease out, okay? All right, so now that we have that handled and we're coming around the front of our coat now, okay? Now we want to line up our break line on the collar with the break line on the jacket, okay? So let's just open this up and get that lined up nicely. And if we want to take and put a little pin in here just to secure it, that's never a bad idea. Use the tools that our tailors have given us, right? And that makes it so much easier. Now we can test it. Again, let's just test it and make sure that this is going to lay the way we want, okay? So if we bring that should lay perfect. We shouldn't have any pulling. It should lay just like, see that? Beautiful, nice, gorgeous straight line right there, okay? Everything here looks wonderful. So yeah, that's perfect. There's no tightness. And in fact, while we're here, since that looks so good, let's go ahead and just take a pin and pin the lapel and the collar here so that we can just keep going, right? We can just baste and baste right onto the lapel, and that will be that, okay? Make our life really super easy. Oh, whenever you can take it, right? Whenever you can take a super easy situation, take it. Because life ain't easy, baby. No, it is not. Life ain't easy. But today in the atelier it is, yeah? We're having a nice time, I hope. Now, the one thing I'm going to say is, if you've never basted a top collar on before, do not get frustrated, okay? This is not an easy thing to do. It can be very challenging, okay? It might be, if you're having a really tough time, you might need to think about putting a little bit more shape into your collar. It might not be curved enough around your shoulder blades, or around the neckline, excuse me, in the shoulder line, okay? But more times than not, you've probably shaped it plenty, all right? And it's just a matter of anything else in tailoring. It's muscle memory, right? It's like the first time you do it, your muscle memory and your brain is like, I don't know what you're doing. Okay. And so don't get frustrated if you have to do it a few times, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 times. Who cares? As long as you get it right. You know, especially if you've never done it before, please. And the fact that you're attempting it, God love you. God love you. This is a very, you know, the collar and the sleeve, right here, I'm going to tack this, right? One more stitch here and then I'm going to tack it. The collar and the sleeves are the hardest, in my opinion, the hardest part of the jacket. 100%, okay? Because they have to be done just right. You know, you've got to get enough shape and the right shape into the undercollar. You got to baste it on properly. You know, you've got to, when you're cross stitching, you got to cross stitch it right. You can't get it too tight. Can't have it too loose. You know, all of it. I mean, putting the top collar on. Oh, like I said, I've got a couple stories for you on that one. Okay. But I'll tell you when we get there. So it's hard. It could be, this is a challenging part of the process. So don't be impatient with yourself. You know, I've probably put on hundreds of collars, hundreds, okay? In both practice, all right, in honing my skills, and in doing it for clients, and obviously in garments that, you know, we've made it when we had the ABTA, you know, I'd always make a garment in class with my students, right? So yes, so this is the first time. Just take it slow, take it easy, and you'll be fine, okay? All right, so here we go. We've got that on. That looks beautiful. Let's take a look, okay? Let's take a look. All right, that is looking very beautiful. Yes, very beautiful. Except I got my, I basted my bridle down. Don't do that, but I did it. Well, I'll take care of fixing that, okay? But when we come back, what I'm going to show you how to do is now we need to come in and we need to cross stitch our beautiful undercollar to the actual jacket itself, okay? So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that so that everything comes together beautifully, okay? So when I come back, I'll show you how to do that. All right, so we've got the top collar basted on now. And what I've done, what I'm going to do is I trimmed back my bridle here. I'm going to trim this back just a little bit more. I feel like this bridle is still a little bit too long here, so I'm going to trim him back. All right, so here's the scoop. We're going to be cross-stitching the collar to the jacket, okay? Couple of really important things to keep in mind. If we look on the inside of our jacket, okay, if you remember, okay, what we did was we added 2.5 centimeters of inlay here. See that? Now, what we do not want to do, okay, is we do not want to cross stitch this inlay to the jacket, because if we do, we're going to have some issues with pulling down the road, okay? So what I'm going to be doing in terms of cross stitching is I'm going to be concentrating on the area top of the lapel, okay, here. So top of the lapel, right along here. I'm going to take my bridle and I'm going to wrap it around the lapel, okay? I want all this laying nice and flat, okay? And I want to transition the canvas and the cloth and so forth nicely around the collar so I don't have like a lot of demarcation in my collar, if you will. So we're going to be actually pad stitching these little bridles down nice and flat and around the undercollar here, okay? I'm just keeping everybody nice and flat and even. In fact, this little guy here is going to give me a little trouble because I have some canvas that I need to trim this back just a little bit here because he's going to just keep getting in my way and poking around. So let's get him out of there. Just like that. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So now he'll lay flat. There we go. So yeah, we just want to use the bridle to transition between the collar and what's going on inside. Okay, in fact, I'm going to make my life a little simple here, and I'm just going to put a pin on the top just to hold it, and I'm going to put a pin on the outside as well on the top just to hold it there nice. Okay, that'll help a bit. Then what we're going to do is, so we're going to pad stitch all around the bridle to keep that real nice. Then we're going to cross stitch right along, okay, the neckline. What we want to be careful of, this is just a little long here, I'm just going to trim this back a smidgen. What we want to be cautious of, okay, is again, we do not want to catch the shoulder line in our cross stitches. So here you can see my shoulder line is basted down with, I caught part of it with my collar. So that's not a big deal. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to baste right along the back area here where we left that 2.5 centimeters. Okay. We're going to be, cross stitching that. And then again, coming over here to the bridle, and let's just go ahead and we'll get him pinned down here nicely. In fact, there's just a little bit too much cloth here as well. So let's lay that out. Sometimes we got to come in and just do a little bit of clean up here and there, but this is just a little bit too much cloth. If it's sticking out of my bridle, okay, I don't need all that. Just get rid of it. That was my inlay from my neckline. So here, we're going to lay this out just like that, okay? And we'll pin it here. Might as well, the collar's laying flat. I'll just pin it out nice like this, okay? And that's going to help us, like I said, transition between the collar and the cloth and canvas and so forth that's on the inside. Okay, so we'll just do that. All right, so that's it. It's pretty straightforward. The challenging thing about working and doing, cross-stitching all this is that, as you can see, there's a lot going on, okay? Obviously, with this jacket being so voluminous, number one, but also there's a lot of things that you have to watch for, okay? So you have to watch that, you're not, first of all, you don't want to go through to the outside of your collar when you're cross-stitching, number one. And you want to just be aware of what you're cross-stitching, because there's a lot of things that do not get cross-stitched down. So you might be saying to yourself, well, Marlene, my God, that doesn't seem like a lot to hold that collar on. You're right. You are right. It isn't a lot of cross-stitching to hold the collar on. We're actually going to be cross-stitching on the outside of our jacket too, on the collar, okay? So there's going to be multiple areas where the collar is held down. So for example, here, can't see that quite as well as on this jacket. If you look, we have cross stitches all along the outside at the bottom where it attaches to the actual neckline itself, and at the top to help hold the undercollar on. So this guy, he's not going anywhere, trust me. It would take a nuclear bomb to blow this collar off of this jacket, all right? All right. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just tacking off, and I'm starting to cross stitch at the top of the lapel. All right, so just at the top of the lapel. My cross stitches are, I'm not making them teeny weeny. So they're maybe about 1 centimeter apart, if that, and so relatively close together. And I'm coming into the cloth quite a bit, okay? Because I want to make sure that that's held on really well. So hopefully you can see that. If you're not familiar with how to do a cross stitch, the cross stitch is the one stitch we use that we work from left to right instead of from right to left. So if you don't know how to do a cross stitch, then you can look in the corner right here. I just think that's so funny. Right here. And you'll see a link to my hand stitch series, where I basically will show you how to do every hand stitch that I use in tailoring, okay? I think there's like 8 separate stitches. And what I do is I not only show you how to do them with the cameras like right here, so you really get a close-up view of what that stitch is, but I also show you where they're used, and I apply the stitch using the same sort of scenario. So for example, when I'm pad stitching, I actually show you on a collar, You know, if I'm doing a cross stitch, I might show you how to do that, you know, when we're basting the biased tape onto the jacket and so forth. So I give you real world situations, and I use real cloth examples to show you how to do these stitches, which I think is important, so you know how to apply the technique properly. So anyway, that's my pitch. Here, what I'm doing now, okay, is I'm coming into my bridle, and I'm actually doing a pad stitch to keep this down, okay? Now I'm working, because I'm cross stitching, I'm working left to right, which is not normally how you do a pad stitch, okay? You work from right to left, but this is just the situation. So it's not, this is not, we're not doing a pad stitch to creating sort of shape. It's just a means of holding the bridle down, so it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? What it does have to be is flat, all right, and secure, and you have to make sure that you're not going on to the outside of the jacket, okay? We do not want to be going to the outside of the collar. So keep your stitches confined to the inside of the jacket here, okay? I don't want to see stitches on the outside from this. Okay? So I'm just working my way up, kind of hoarding it, sorry. Let me bring that out a bit. Again, I know I'm using black thread, so it's a little tough to see, but I think I'll show you when I finish this little section here. I'll put some chalk on it so you can see what on God's green earth I'm doing, okay? So that you can do it as well. You can do it as well. We just have a couple more stitches here, and we should be in pretty good shape. Yes. All right. One, you're gonna slip out of there? There we go. One last little stitch and he'll be fine. Okay, so there's that. So yeah, if I put a little chalk on here and show you, this is all I've done. You see that? There's my stitches. You can see what I did in terms of pad stitching that. All right, so that's going to hold that down there, and it's going to hold it down here and keep it nice and transition nice here, so we don't have all this canvas and so forth, you know, getting in our way or coming through the cloth is really what we're trying to do. Okay? Called soft structured tailoring, people. That's right. Soft structured tailoring is always graduating our layers. Okay? Perfect. I put my iron all the way over there because it's, first of all, unusually warm here in Dallas today. And I'm working in the afternoon, which means the afternoon sun is starting to come in my windows, which is lovely, but it's also hot. So I just had a couple of stitches here to secure this down. All right, very good. So that looks lovely and ready to go. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's that. So now, so if you think of this, we can break this into three separate places, okay? First, we've got the top of the lapel, which we're cross stitching, okay? Then we're pad stitching the bridle to transition everything, and that's helping to hold the shoulder area to and the neckline, if you will, to the collar. And now we're coming to the back neckline, okay? So here is my inlay, okay? It's a little basted down, but here's my inlay here. So I don't want to catch that, so get that out of the way. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to tack this right here, okay? and then I'm going to do a cross stitch that's relatively deep into the neckline here, okay? Because I want this, you know, we got a lot of movement in the neck, right? And this is an area where we want to make sure it's real secure, okay? So I'm coming, maybe my stitches are a centimeter apart, and then I'm coming, and I hope you can see this, deep into the collar here. You see? Let me bring that forward. So about a centimeter apart, and here I'm coming down. I'm probably coming down about a centimeter too, okay? That way I'm sure that this is really secure. But I know it's tough to see because look, we got so much going on here. We got a little fraying happening. We got the whole inside of the coat happening. This is one of the reasons why the collar can be a bit of a challenge because of situations like this. So we just work through it. It's not that big of a deal. As long as you have a nice, firm cross stitch, okay? Now, the other thing I didn't mention is I am, again, using my machine thread and some beeswax, okay? Because, again, I do not want these stitches to come through or be seen through the cloth, okay? And so they're very small, or it's very thin thread, which will keep us from seeing anything through the top collar, which is really important. So, all right, now again, this side is probably a better illustration of our shoulder line here, you see? So here's the shoulder line, and of course, we do not want to get that involved at all. What's going on here? A little thread. We don't want that getting involved, so we're going to get that out of the way, okay? Get that out of the way, and we'll finish up our cross stitch here along the back of the neck. So it's not a really, this isn't a really big area to have to work in, honestly. Just a few areas here. You might experience a little tightness, and that is because in the cloth on the neckline compared to the collar. Don't freak out about that. That's okay. It's because we put that ease into the collar, okay? We put that ease in. The next lesson we'll be working on together is I'm going to be showing you how to press the collar and work its shape slightly, okay? And then we're going to be actually drawing the shape of what we want the collar to look like, right? The curve, we want to give it a little bit of a curve. Right now, there's not much shape to it. It's too big. So we're going to do that, shape it. Oh my goodness, there we go. All right, so we're finished there. Shape and cut it. So that's a very important video because you don't want to mess that up. You don't want to mess that one up. Or you'll be putting another collar on and you won't be happy about it, right? Not at all. You won't be happy about that at all. Can you imagine if you had to like take the collar off and make a whole new one? Ugh, I think I'd be very upset about that. Yeah. I have never had to do that. Thank God. Thank God. I've always been very lucky, except for one situation, which I'm not going to share my funny story with you until we actually put the top collar on, because it is a top collar funny story. Well, it wasn't funny at the time. I'll say that. Not even close. It was frustrating and aggravating and upsetting. All right, so here I am again, and I'm just pad stitching the bridle down. It's giving me a little bit of a difficult time here. Let's see if we can work through it. So I'm just pad stitching the bridle down so it's nice and flat. So it's nice and flat and transitioning everything here nicely. Okay. Nicely. Looks great. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we'll do. Just press it out a little bit. And I'll show you here in a second why that's important. Okay. Let's get through this little guy. Oops. So, wonderful. So just a few more steps with the collar. Yeah, just a few more steps, and then we'll be doing our sleeves. Yikes. Yikes. The sleeves are, they're challenging for sure. I think the hardest part, honestly, for me, now you might disagree, but the hardest part for me in putting, what's the matter, Pebbles, you want to go? Pardon me one second. You want to go outside? You want to go? Come on. Go ahead. Go on. Good girl. There you go. Good girl. Pebbles. She had enough of my babbling. Is getting the shoulder pads in properly. That is always, for me, the hardest part of the sleeves. Nothing else. You got to get those shoulder pads in just right. You got to catch them into the inlay and into the sleeve, or you have shoulder pads popping out the back of your sleeve, and that's no good. Yeah. So those are my nemesis, if you will, of the sleeve. The damn shoulder pads. But all right, so here we are. I'm just going to work my way down the front of the bridle real quick here. Okay. I'm going to put a couple more rows in really fast, and then we're going to work our way across the top of the lapel. Okay, here. Just put one more and tack this off. Lovely. My little pin out of the way. Perfecto. All right, I'll tack that here. And then we'll just do this little bit right on the lapel. Get a few more cross stitches in this, and we'll be ready. We'll be ready to press this bad boy. Yeah? All right. So here I'm just going to need to tack this off again real quick. And then we'll go ahead and just cross stitch the rest of this down. Easy breezy. Easy breezy. Super simple. And again, here my cross stitches are close together and deep into the cloth to hold it real nice. Especially this cloth. You remember how much this frays, so to come down deep is important because we don't want this fraying out. Okay, here, very nicely. Okay, and then we're just going to come over to the side here, right on the edge, and we'll be all done. So not too bad, ladies and gentlemen, is it? Not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. Relatively cool. Like I said, if you're attempting to put a collar on and you know that you're getting to this point, don't get frustrated. There's a lot going on, but just think of it, it's like 3 different places, right? Top of the lapel, bridle, back of the neckline, that's it. And if you can remember that and just work around some of the noise inside the jacket, I think you'll be great. So, hey, thanks for joining me today. We'll be back with another lesson. Thank you for joining me in the Atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And in my next lesson, I'm going to show you how to actually shape and cut the undercollar in preparation for putting the top collar on. You won't want to miss it. That's what's happening next time in the Atelier.